What started as regular rap tension suddenly spiraled into straight-up crisis territory. This wasn't just online shade or industry politics anymore. Things took a wild turn when Fivio Foreign allegedly hinted that he was sitting on explicit footage involving 21 Savage, claims so explosive they sent the internet into instant meltdown mode. 1 minute, it was just tweets and tough talk. The next, Fivio was implying he had evidence that could blow up reputations and careers overnight. Since then, 21 has gone completely silent, social media has been in full panic, and the beef has crossed into dangerous territory. This isn't messy drama for clicks, this is the kind of chaos that can permanently stain a legacy. And once you dig into exactly what Fivio is accusing him of, along with the so-called receipts he keeps referencing, the entire situation starts to feel much darker and more serious. Fivio, by the looks of it, has been unraveling in real time. His frustration with 21 has been building for a while, but nobody expected it to explode into allegations this personal and graphic. Every time he speaks on the situation, things seem to get uglier. What was once a disagreement now feels like a full-on character assassination. Dragging Young Thug into the drama didn't come completely out of nowhere either. He represents the same street-centered ideology that Fivio has openly criticized for years, so his name being pulled into the mess was almost inevitable. From Fivio's perspective, this is bigger than personal beef, it's about dismantling a culture he believes has caused more harm than good. The spark that lit all of this reportedly came from 21 attempting to play peacemaker within Atlanta's rap scene. He publicly urged rival artists to squash their issues, starting with the long-standing tension between Young Thug and Ghana. Everyone already knows the controversy surrounding Ghana, so that part didn't shock anyone. What did raise eyebrows was how blunt 21 was when addressing it all. He openly called for reconciliation, acknowledging that loyalty, mistakes, and street codes had already caused enough damage. His message boiled down to this: the streets don't reward anyone, they only leave scars. He pushed the same energy toward other feuding artists too, revealing that he had privately urged them to settle their differences long before things escalated publicly. What was meant to be a peace effort, however, seems to have backfired in a major way. Instead of calming the storm, it cracked open old wounds, reignited tensions, and set off one of the messiest public rap feuds we've seen in a while, and now, nobody knows how far it's going to go. He even went as far as saying that if certain artists had never split, their combined force would have been unstoppable. From the outside, it looked like 21 was trying to play peacemaker, someone stepping in to reconnect fractured relationships and cool down long-running tensions. And when Young Thug echoed that same "forget the streets" message right back at him online, it seemed like they were on the same page. But that one phrase was all it took for Fivio to snap. Instead of seeing the message as a rejection of negativity and self-destruction, Fivio interpreted it as disrespect. In his eyes, saying "forget the streets" sounded like turning your back on the very environment that helped build their careers. That frustration poured out in a long series of posts where he defended street culture as a support system, not a curse. He argued that the streets had placed people in powerful positions, kept him motivated, and introduced him to individuals he considers family for life. To him, criticizing the streets wasn't growth, it was betrayal. He made it clear he didn't want to see anyone from that background supporting artists who spoke that way, regardless of status or fame. While he acknowledged rejecting violence and reckless behavior, he insisted that there's a sense of loyalty, brotherhood, and authenticity in the streets that can't be replicated anywhere else. Most people watching, however, felt the situation was being misread. It seemed obvious to many that 21 wasn't dismissing his roots, he was condemning the destructive cycles that keep pulling rappers into legal trouble and danger. But whether Fivio truly misunderstood the message or simply didn't care, one thing was clear: he wasn't slowing down. He took things a step further by airing out his frustrations publicly, even calling 21 a hypocrite and questioning his credibility. Eventually, 21 responded directly, telling Fivio to stop speaking on his name. That could have been the end, but it wasn't. Fivio doubled down, making it clear he wasn't interested in back-and-forth arguments. His response was sharp, dismissive, and deliberately final, instantly igniting social media. Many fans read it as a power move, an attempt to shut the conversation down before it could escalate. But peace never lasts long online. Almost immediately, Fivio followed up with comments aimed at a broader issue, criticizing artists who mistreat women while maintaining a tough public image. Given his own controversial past, fans quickly assumed this wasn't a general statement, it felt personal. The internet did what it always does, digging up old clips, lyrics, and interviews, trying to piece together where the resentment really started. Speculation ran wild. Some believed it was about respect. Others thought it came down to loyalty or bruised egos. What most people agreed on was that this tension didn't come out of nowhere. Instead of backing off, Fivio leaned fully into the chaos. He shifted the beef from ideological arguments to deeply personal accusations, claiming that 21's loyalty to Young Thug wasn't rooted in music or friendship at all. According to him, it was tied to a private history that went far beyond collaboration. He alleged that both artists had been involved in intimate situations with Latto, a claim that immediately sent social media into overdrive, given her status and tendency to stay out of other people's drama. Then he escalated it further, suggesting that the real connection had little to do with her at all. The implication was clear: the goal wasn't truth-seeking, it was humiliation. Whether factual or not, the allegations were designed to challenge public personas, provoke reactions, and weaponize long-standing rumors that have followed both artists for years. At that point, the beef stopped being about music, morals, or the streets. It became something much messier, and far harder to walk back. The fallout was instant. As soon as the claims hit the timeline, the internet split in two. One side laughed it off, brushing it away as obvious provocation, someone saying the most outrageous thing possible just to hijack attention. But the other side wasn't so quick to joke it away. What caught people off guard was that Fivio didn't retreat or soften his stance. Instead, he doubled down, repeatedly insisting that he was speaking his truth. In a culture where credibility often matters more than receipts, that refusal to backtrack alone was enough to make some people hesitate before dismissing it entirely. Soon, comment sections turned into debate halls. Group chats, forums, and timelines buzzed with arguments over whether this was pure fabrication or whether there might be something buried beneath the noise. Fans pointed out that rumors like these hadn't come out of thin air. For years, both artists had been surrounded by speculation, often unfair, often rooted in stereotypes, based on lyrics, aesthetics, or moments pulled wildly out of context. In one case especially, legal troubles and time behind bars only intensified the scrutiny, with people analyzing everything from body language to vocal tone as if it all meant something. None of this speculation was new, but Fivio's comments reignited it in a way that made it impossible to ignore. At the same time, a strong wave of backlash hit back just as hard. Many people argued that dragging someone's rumored sexuality into a public dispute was tired, lazy, and rooted in outdated thinking. They pointed out that using queerness, real or imagined, as a weapon says far more about the accuser than the accused. That pushback sparked a broader discussion about hip-hop's ongoing struggle with masculinity, privacy, and where the line should be drawn when beef turns personal instead of competitive. Others viewed the whole thing less as a moral issue and more as strategy. From that perspective, the move wasn't about exposing anything, it was about redirecting attention. By throwing out allegations so shocking they dominated every conversation, the focus shifted away from earlier criticisms and uncomfortable topics. Suddenly, no one was talking about accountability or past behavior. Everyone was locked into the spectacle. In that sense, the tactic worked perfectly. Meanwhile, the lack of direct responses only added fuel to the fire. Silence became its own headline. Some fans interpreted it as maturity, others as avoidance, and a few, predictably, as confirmation, even though silence proves absolutely nothing. With no clear statements to anchor the story, the internet filled in the blanks the way it always does: memes, theories, exaggerated takes, and endless speculation. Pulling Latto into the situation raised the stakes even higher. Many people rallied around her, criticizing the way her name was used as a prop in someone else's conflict. Supporters pointed out how often women end up as collateral damage in disputes between men, regardless of whether the claims are true, exaggerated, or completely made up. It reopened a familiar conversation about how celebrity drama routinely disregards women's autonomy and boundaries. As the noise continued to swirl, it became obvious this was no longer about a single comment or comeback. It had turned into a battle over image, influence, and who controls the story. Fivio positioned himself as someone fearless enough to say the most shocking thing out loud, while the others maintained distance, at least publicly. With legal pressure and constant scrutiny already surrounding one of them, the situation felt less like entertainment and more like a reminder of how quickly rumors can snowball when someone's life is already under a microscope. What everyone was left with wasn't clarity, it was confusion. No evidence. No confirmations. Just reactions stacked on reactions, each louder than the last. Some people moved on quickly, treating it like another internet moment destined to fade. Others kept dissecting it, using it as an example of how fast rap beef can shift from lyrical competition to deeply personal territory, and how destructive that shift can be. Whether the claims were exaggerated, fabricated, or rooted in some private truth may never be known, but the impact was undeniable. Once words like that are released into the public, there's no undo button. And for those paying attention, none of this felt random. Whispers like these didn't suddenly appear overnight. They've been circulating for years, passed around quietly in jokes, side glances, and half-finished sentences that start with, "I'm not saying anything," but, long before this moment, people were already reading between the lines, pointing out details that didn't seem to match the image being presented. Fashion choices, tone, the way he spoke to people close to him, small things that, fair or not, kept fueling speculation. That curiosity only grew louder once he started openly challenging expectations. When he leaned into fashion choices that blurred traditional gender norms, some saw it as bold self-expression. Others saw it as intentional provocation. In a genre where masculinity is heavily policed, that kind of imagery was guaranteed to spark conversation. Interviews didn't quiet it either. Instead of dismissing the chatter, he framed it as art, freedom, and expression. For some fans, that explanation landed. For others, it only added more questions. Then there was the language, the affectionate terms, the comfort with vulnerability in public spaces where most rappers keep a hard shell. Over time, the speculation stopped being limited to anonymous trolls and started coming from fans, critics, and even peers observing from the sidelines. Whether any of it was fair is another debate entirely. But by the time this latest controversy erupted, the groundwork had already been laid. What Fivio did wasn't create the conversation, he detonated one that had been quietly building for years. People act like they forgot that interview, but they didn't. Everyone remembers it. He was asked point-blank about the purple dress on his album cover, and instead of dodging the question, he leaned straight into it. He talked about comfort, freedom, and refusing to be boxed in by other people's expectations. On paper, it sounded open-minded, even admirable. But in a genre where image is everything, that kind of confidence also feeds speculation. Once questions like that start floating around, especially when the artist doesn't seem bothered by them, they rarely disappear. Fame doesn't mute those conversations, it just makes them louder. Then came the moment that really shifted the energy, the leaked jail calls. That was when quiet curiosity turned into outright shock. Hearing him talk in ways people weren't prepared for instantly changed the tone of the discussion. At that point, context barely mattered. Whether those calls were exaggerated, misunderstood, or cherry-picked didn't stop the reaction. The internet doesn't wait for nuance. Longtime supporters were suddenly stuck, critics felt justified, and social media did what it always does, looping clips, dissecting tone, and adding layers of commentary until the original moment barely mattered anymore. When people began openly questioning his sexuality, he hit another crossroads. He could have brushed it off, ignored it, or shut it down calmly. Instead, he exploded. The response was emotional, defensive, and loud. And in the public eye, that kind of reaction often raises more eyebrows than silence ever could. It didn't read like confidence, it read like frustration. Then he escalated it even further by dragging others into the conversation, claiming that plenty of rappers were living double lives while pretending otherwise in public. That post caught everyone off guard. It wasn't clever. It wasn't coded. It was raw, reckless, and unfiltered. The message was basically, if you want to label me, then nobody's secrets are safe. Suddenly, it wasn't about defending himself, it felt like a warning shot. The tone wasn't explanation, it was exposure. And when he threw in offhand comments that sounded more like provocation than humor, it only deepened the mess. It came off less like self-defense and more like someone daring the room to push back. What really confused people was how random some of the names felt. Certain artists were pulled into the situation with no clear reason, no visible tension, no public history. That's when fans started to realize this wasn't a calculated move, it was a spiral. It felt like someone pulling at loose threads in an industry that depends on image control and silence to function. Whether the claims were true almost became secondary. The shock was that they were said at all. Then, just as abruptly, the post disappeared. No explanation. No clarification. No accountability. Just gone. But deleting something online doesn't erase it, it confirms it mattered. Screenshots had already spread, and the silence afterward felt heavy. People speculated endlessly, legal pressure, private phone calls, second thoughts. Whatever the reason, the lack of follow-up left people uneasy. If you're going to shake the room like that, people expect you to either stand on it or explain yourself. Fast forward, and then Fivio steps into the picture with his own accusations, suddenly tying together names that had already been swirling in rumor territory. That's when things started to feel connected for a lot of fans. It didn't feel random anymore, it felt like an extension of a story that had been quietly unfolding for years. Even though one of the artists wasn't originally from that city, his ties ran deep enough that people felt the association still applied. For fans who already remembered those old posts and interviews, Fivio's comments didn't sound like new gossip, they sounded like reinforcement. Suddenly, people were revisiting old lyrics, old clips, old moments, trying to read new meaning into everything. Every pause felt intentional. Every vague line felt loaded. And the lack of a direct response only made the speculation louder. In a culture fueled by reactions, silence isn't neutral, it becomes part of the story. Some people argued that if any of it were real, those closest would know. That idea alone made the situation uglier, because it suggested that what was being said wasn't just trolling, but private knowledge weaponized during a breakdown. This wasn't competitive rap energy or playful provocation. It felt personal. It felt volatile. It felt like someone flipping the table and letting the consequences fall wherever they may. That's why this whole situation doesn't feel like typical rap drama. It feels like a detonation. No bars traded. No clever shots. Just allegations thrown into the open, where they can't be pulled back. You can deny words, but you can't erase the images they plant. And in a genre where masculinity, reputation, and perception carry enormous weight, that kind of accusation cuts deeper than almost anything else. What makes it even messier is how quickly speculation hardens into belief. Once an idea is introduced, it becomes a filter through which everything is viewed. Lyrics get re-examined. Relationships feel suspicious. Silence feels loud. And in this case, staying quiet didn't slow the rumors, it amplified them. Some argued that responding would only give the story more life. Others insisted that not responding made it worse. Either way, by that point, the damage was already done. When you zoom out, this situation exposes more than just the people involved, it puts the entire culture under a spotlight. The fact that rumors about sexuality are still treated like career-destroying explosives says a lot about how much growth hip-hop still needs. At the same time, the willingness to weaponize those rumors, regardless of truth, shows just how cold and unforgiving the industry can be. What began as quiet chatter slowly evolved, first screenshots, then leaked audio, then reckless tweets, until it became a runaway narrative that no single person could rein in. That's the harsh reality. Once something like this is released into the public, control is gone. It doesn't matter who deletes a post or refuses to respond. The story keeps moving on its own. Fans argue over it. Blogs turn it into profit. Comment sections transform it into memes and conspiracy theories. And the people at the center are left carrying consequences that don't vanish just because the original post did. In an industry obsessed with image, one emotional reaction can permanently reshape how you're perceived. Now old clips and past moments are being replayed like courtroom exhibits. Every previous interview, every quote, every aesthetic choice is suddenly treated as proof of something bigger. Pulling Latto into the narrative pushed the situation from chaotic to outright irresponsible, turning her into collateral damage in a fight she never signed up for. Fans are dissecting everything, every pause, every silence, every post, searching for cracks in the armor. And at this point, it almost doesn't matter whether Fivio is exaggerating, unraveling, or genuinely standing on what he claims. The fallout is already locked in. This stopped being about ego, street credibility, or pride a long time ago. Now it's about secrets, and once secrets are dragged into the open, pressure builds. Eventually, someone always breaks.